Welcome in, everybody, to the Jessica Glow Up podcast. I am so glad that you're here. Today, we are talking about the strategies that helped to heal my depression. There are so many different things that had to come together to make that work. And I am here to break it down for you, to give you the patient's perspective, so that if you or someone you know is dealing with depression, you have got a firsthand account of what that might be like and the things that might be able to help. First off, let me introduce myself for anybody who doesn't know me. My name is Jessica. I go by Jessica Glow Up. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. We do this podcast weekly, and then I also run a live room in TikTok every single day. I run a community in which we are glowing up. Glowing up means elevating your life, making yourself a priority. It is a mindset. It is a movement. We do also have glow up apparel, lots of fun stuff going on. I used to be an educator. I have a master's in education, and now I do this full time, podcasting, merch, live hosting, all the stuff. So I'm excited to be hanging out with you today and talking all about depression. And I will tell you, I have talked about depression so much that it's not hard for me anymore. It's not triggering for me anymore. I can say it and sound not emotional. And it's not because I don't have feelings. It's because I have said this every single day for the last year, helping people in my live space. And so it is something that has become very normal to me. So again, as a quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. I am not a crisis line. I am an educator, a peer, a person who has been there, who is just sharing my personal experience in hopes that it helps other people to know that they are not alone. So let's get into it. The typical thing that you're going to hear about treating depression is an antidepressant, an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Those are the most common first-line treatment for depression. And that is what I was prescribed. Initially, I was prescribed Lexapro, and later I was prescribed sertraline or Zoloft. And so those are the things that I have experience with in terms of SSRIs. I will tell you that what people don't know about SSRIs is that they take time to build up in your system. They take time before they are going to work. And that is something that I think a lot of people are not prepared for. I think many people are waiting until they get to the absolute worst point in their life before they ask for help because they want to believe that they're going to be able to get better on their own. They want to believe that they're strong enough. They don't want to be seen as weak. They don't want to seem like they aren't able to take it. And so they decide to push and push and push until they really just become dysfunctional and cannot push at all. And then you go to the doctor thinking that they're going to prescribe something that's going to make you immediately feel better. And you are sadly mistaken because those medications tend to take 6 to 8 weeks to work, if they work at all. And typically they're going to start you on a low dose, and it is going to take quite some time to be able to get up to a therapeutic dose. When I started on Lexapro, I was at 5 milligrams and having to work my way up slowly. Eventually I ended up at 20, but that was a multi-month process. Like probably we're talking 3 to 4 months before it was at a therapeutic dose, the dose that I needed in order to experience efficacy. So I want you to know that if you are looking for instantaneous relief, medication, at least SSRIs, do not do that. They are still a great first line. They are still something great to do, but they are something that is going to require a whole lot of patience. So the typical thing that many doctors will prescribe, and again, I'm not providing medical advice, but typically they'll suggest an SSRI and therapy, talk therapy. So it could be like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. There's all kinds of different psychotherapies that are out there. But basically, you sitting in a room or doing a virtual session, talking to somebody about the problems that are going on, brainstorming coping skills, coming up with solutions, ways to deal with how to process your emotions. Because depression, basically for me, manifested as a lack of motivation to do anything, a prevalence of suicidal ideation, and obsessive thoughts about feeling like ending my life was the only way to get out of how much doom I was experiencing. Now, for me, my depression went hand in hand. It was tied to my anxiety. I had severe panic disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. I was experiencing extreme panic attacks every single day. And so a lot of my depression was what they call reactive, which means that my depression was, I was depressed about being anxious. And for a lot of people, that will co-occur that way. For some people, the depression comes first and then the anxiety. And for some people, it's the anxiety and then the depression. But yes, I did go to therapy. I went to talk therapy. And typically, when somebody is prescribed to go to therapy, it's usually like once a week. That's kind of the typical standard for therapy, once a week, maybe twice a month, depending on your circumstances. And there is a whole process you have to go through to find a therapist who fits, who, has your values and your interests and specializes in your area and is available. And oftentimes they have wait lists, and do they take your insurance and can you afford it? And does their schedule work for your schedule? There's a lot of hoop jumping that happens. Fortunately, when I was really struggling with my mental health, I had found BetterHelp, which is an online form of therapy that had a very flexible schedule, and it was affordable. And so that was what works for me. BetterHelp, if you're listening, I would love for you to be a sponsor. Reach out to me. Anyways, so I was doing therapy. I was doing it weekly. But if you are maybe having mild anxiety or depression, that's something that therapy can treat once a week. But if you are experiencing extreme depression or anxiety, and I'm talking about like with the GAD-7 and the PH9, the surveys that you take for anxiety and depression, I am talking about scoring the worst possible numbers on those things. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a medical professional, but probably once a week therapy is not going to solve your problems. There are too many things that need to be addressed. It is too severe. You need support on a more regular basis. You need a higher level of care than what weekly therapy is able to provide for you. So if you are struggling to that degree, I want you to reach out to a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a therapist and ask what PHPs, partial hospitalization programs, or IOPs, intensive outpatient programs, are available in your area, and ideally take your insurance. I want you to look into what other options are out there, because those are going to be programs that are going to be much more intensive, a higher step up in the level of care, where you are getting more immediate feedback more regularly, more support from therapists, psychiatrists, etc., helping you with safety planning, keeping you alive, and helping you to know that you are not alone. I attended both of those things, partial hospitalization program and intensive outpatient program. You do need to do an intake appointment for those. And it does sometimes take time to wait. Sometimes there is a wait list, and sometimes you need a prior authorization from your insurance. But I will tell you, both of those programs were very helpful to me, and I wish I had discovered them sooner, and I wish I hadn't been so afraid of them. I was very afraid of them because I didn't know what they were like, and that is part of why I do this podcast now, because I don't want there to be any question marks. I don't want people to be sitting there going, I should probably try that thing, but I don't know what it's like, so I'm not going to go. One of the biggest misconceptions is that a partial hospitalization program is a hospital. It's not. At least the one that I went to wasn't. It basically meant that I didn't need to be an inpatient 24/7 psychiatric care, but I needed a high level of care. I was there from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, getting therapy, learning strategies, learning resources, getting my meds adjusted, having various lab work done, and it was very helpful. Unfortunately, it didn't help soon enough, and it didn't help quick enough for me. If you need to be kept safe 100%, not just during certain hours, then what you need is inpatient psychiatric care. Inpatient psychiatric care has a reputation for being traumatizing. Many people have been traumatized from it. It is not really a place that you go to heal. It is a place that you go to survive. I went there and I survived. I did not go there and heal. I got through it. It kept me alive. And then I needed to do the work in a PHP, IOP, and individual therapy in order to actually get better. Medication helps. The medication helps kind of take the edge off, but it doesn't just suddenly, you don't just take the medication and suddenly everything is sunshine and rainbows and you're happy again. I wish it were that simple. The goal with the medication is to get those suicidal ideation thoughts to slow down, to get yourself a little bit of motivation and energy, to help yourself get back to a baseline that is a little bit more pleasant so that existing isn't so darn painful. But they're not like suddenly, like medication is not suddenly going to make you feel like you're completely fulfilled and you found your life purpose and you have the best friends and everything is just amazing. The medication is not that good. So I ended up going to an inpatient psychiatric facility, and I got admitted to that through an ER. I will also tell you I had an experience in which I went to an ER, asked for help, asked to be admitted, and was sent home. So if you do not get sent in the first time and you know you need it, keep asking, be a bold advocate for your needs, or get a friend or family member who can advocate for you, because this is serious, it's your life, and you are allowed to take up space. So inpatient didn't really heal me, but it kept me alive. Partial hospitalization program and intensive outpatient program where I was really doing the work, where I was examining, how did I end up in this mess? How did I end up in a mental health crisis? And I'll tell you the answer. The answer was that I had spent the first 30 years of my life believing that perfectionism and people pleasing were the keys to success. I believed that that was what would make people like me. I believed that that was how I would get what I wanted, how I would be successful in my career, and honestly, how I would keep the peace. How I would keep the peace of everyone else so that nobody was unhappy with me because I had too much anxiety to handle that. So in PHP and IOP was really when I did a deep dive into examining how did I end up into this mess and what changes do I need to make in my life in order to never be in this mess again. And I will tell you, I didn't learn my lesson the first time. For those who know my story very well, you know I had a mental health crisis 2 years in a row because I did not learn my lesson the first time. It's hard. And give yourself grace with that because you are unlearning years and years and years of thinking a certain way. Those are very strong neural pathways in your brain. I had reinforced time and time again that productivity was where it was at, that getting good grades, that being a yes girl was where it was at. Those were the things that I had reinforced in my life. So even as I was opening up my mind to this idea that maybe there was a different way, it was scary and it was new and it was very hard to accept. And this idea that I might actually set boundaries and stick up for myself and that my feelings would matter even if they made other people uncomfortable was something that was very, very hard for me to accept. And part of that is because when you change your boundaries, there are people who get upset. There are people in your life who have benefited from you having no boundaries. And those people are going to freak the heck out when you suddenly start setting some. They might call you rude. They might call you unkind, unloving. They might accuse you of not being a good friend or a good family member. I'm going to need you to do it anyways, because doing what you need to do to take care of you is going to save your life. And when we are talking about depression this severe, your life is on the line and your life is important. And if those people truly love and care about you, they will eventually come around. They may not come around right away, but they will eventually come around and learn that you being in their life with boundaries is better than you not being in their life at all. A boundary is an invitation. It's an invitation saying, I want you in my life. This is what I need you to do in order for you to be in my life. If I just didn't want you in my life at all, I could just ignore you. But if I am giving you an invitation and saying, this is the way in which we can have a relationship, if those people want to maintain that relationship, they'll figure out how to do that. It might take them a little while, but they'll eventually get there. So the way that we solve our depression, medication helps. I personally do subscribe to the whole belief of there being hormonal imbalances. I understand that different people have different opinions about that. I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor. I will not pretend to be able to scientifically explain to you what causes depression because honestly, I have no idea. But I will tell you, I do think that the medication plays a part in it. There were people who told me that I just needed to eat right and exercise. And I will agree that what you eat and whether you exercise and also whether you sleep absolutely impacts your mental health for sure. But I also believe that some people are experiencing a unique enough situation that diet and exercise on its own is not going to fix the problem. You would not tell somebody who is suffering stage 4 cancer that they should diet and exercise to feel better. You would not. When we are dealing with a severe medical condition, which is what severe depression is, we need the big treatments, the serious big treatments in order to treat them, along with those good lifestyle habits like diet and exercise. But I will tell you, most people who are depressed are not eating well and are not exercising. And telling them to do that is demoralizing, because most of them are like, I do not have the motivation to get out of bed, let alone actually go to an exercise class or go on a walk. And usually you either don't feel like eating at all, or you just feel like eating a bunch of junk food. So the idea that I'm somehow supposed to eat well and exercise just sounds kind of absurd. Maybe once the medication starts working, maybe once I start going to therapy, maybe eventually I'll get the motivation to do all of that, but not right away. So give people grace. So medication, therapy, not only individual weekly therapy, but larger scale therapy, higher steps up, depending on what level of care you may need, maybe inpatient psychiatric care, maybe partial hospitalization program, maybe intensive outpatient program. If you are not struggling with your mental health right now, I want you to pause this and right now go Google what PHPs and IOPs are in your area, get it printed out or written down, and get it either on your fridge or in your junk drawer or somewhere where you know you will be able to find it when you need it. Because I will tell you, an anxious and depressed brain is not very good at doing research. So get that information. It could save the life of you or a loved one to have that information. Write it down, get it in a place that you know you will never lose it, where heaven forbid you end up in that situation, you have the information. Also include on that list 988. 988 is a phone number you can call or text for mental health support. And I will tell you, 988 was a big part of my survival within depression. There were many days that I ended up with all of these awful suicidal ideations that would come in my head on repeat and really not leave me alone. And it was exhausting. And my brain lied to me and told me that there was only one way out. And I felt like a burden. I felt like nobody wants to hear me talk about this. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I don't want to make people hear about this again when they've already heard about it for the last 3 months. So 988 was what I had. I could text them. I had privacy. I could message them and tell them how I was feeling. And there was someone who would listen, who would validate, who would offer coping skills, who would help me get to a calmer and cooler place. And I will be completely real with and tell you, they're not gonna totally fix everything. They're not gonna wave a magic wand and make it all better, but they will keep you alive for the day. They will assess your safety, but you have to be honest with them. If you're not honest with them, there's really not so much that they can do. So you have to tell them how severe it is. You have to not be afraid. And I'll tell you, I was afraid. I was afraid to tell them how much I was struggling. I wish I had been even more honest with them with it than I was. I think had I been more honest with them, I probably would have ended up in inpatient psychiatric care much sooner, which would have been much better for me. So I encourage you to be as honest as you can, even when it feels like you're tattling on yourself, even when you're afraid of what may happen, because they can call emergency services. I will tell you, in my experience, they never did, but they can. They can have people show up if they are worried about your immediate safety. If they feel that your life is in danger, they can call for help. They have the right to do that. But honestly, it's worth it. If that's what you need, it's worth it. Be honest with them. Be honest with any medical professional, because they cannot help you if they do not understand the true severity of what you are experiencing. And I will tell you, I delayed the care that I needed because I was in denial. I was in denial to myself and in denial to others about how bad it really was. And I think had I truly articulated how bad it was, I would have ended up in an inpatient psychiatric facility probably months before I actually did. So raise your voice, speak out. One of the reasons why I am still alive today is because I told people I was struggling. I could have kept it to myself. I could have not told a soul because I didn't want to be a burden or a failure. I told people. I told my husband, I told my parents, I told some of my friends, I told my doctor, I told my therapist. People knew. And because they knew, they were able to help keep me safe. They were able to connect me to resources. If nobody knew, I would just be suffering in my own head. I do not know the statistic, but I do know there is a statistic that says if you talk to just one more person, your odds of survival go way up. Way up. So let somebody in. I understand that you might feel like a burden. You might feel like nobody wants to hear what you're going through. I will tell you a quote from Citizen Soldier, who is a singer that I really look up to. He's also a therapist. He says, I would rather hear your hell than see your funeral. And anyone who is a true friend of yours, someone who genuinely cares about you, is going to say that, is going to say, I would rather hear that you are suffering. I would rather listen. I would rather hold space for what you are going through than to find out when it's too late and there's nothing I can do about it. And now I'm grieving because I didn't know that you were struggling. Please tell somebody. I run a room called the Glow Up Space. It is not a crisis line, but it is a place in which you are allowed to talk about what you are going through. I will refer people to 988 if it is that severe of a situation. But if you are struggling and you need a place to be able to talk about it, I would love to welcome you into our community. I go live 9:30 a.m. and 9 p.m. PST on TikTok, and we are a supportive community that listens, that cares, that shows you that you're not alone, and we will encourage you to seek out the help that you need. Now, I wish I could say that all those things that I just named solved my problems, because honestly, that seems like that should be enough things to solve my problems, but I needed something else. That wasn't enough on its own. We added a second antidepressant called Remeron, along with my Zoloft. Remeron, or mirtazapine, is the generic name of it. That is a medication that can cause weight gain because it increases your appetite. At the time, I wasn't concerned about that because I wasn't eating because I was so anxious, but that did eventually cause other complications for my health care. So do keep that in mind. Make sure you're talking to a psychiatrist about all of the various side effects and how to accommodate for those side effects, how to make it work, because there are solutions, there are workarounds. So I ended up on multiple medications. I was also on Buspar, and at the time I was also on Klonopin, which is a controlled substance. It is a benzo. Benzos are addictive. It is very easy to get hooked on them. It is dangerous to stop them cold turkey. People can get addicted to them very, very quickly and then develop a tolerance and need a higher dose. So you need to be very careful, incredibly careful if you are prescribed those, to make sure you're taking them as directed and being very closely followed by a doctor or a psychiatrist, because the potential for long-term addiction is very, very, very serious. I eventually did get off of Klonopin, but it was a very slow weaning back, and it was challenging. It was definitely challenging. I experienced an increase in panic as I was getting off of my Klonopin. Klonopin is known to treat anxiety. It's not known to treat depression. It actually can make your depression worse, but I needed it for my anxiety. So what I ended up getting, because none of those things were working well enough on their own, was transcranial magnetic stimulation, known as TMS. Again, if you are not struggling right now, I want you to go look up right now where TMS is offered in your area. Get that contact information, print it out or write it down, post it somewhere where you know you'll be able to find it. Because again, an anxious and depressed brain is not very good at doing this research. TMS typically is something that insurance is going to approve if you have treatment-resistant depression, meaning that you have tried 2 or more medications and have not experienced a significant relief in your symptoms. They are going to look at your scores on a GAD-7 and a PH9 in order to decide whether your depression is severe enough or your anxiety is severe enough to need TMS. TMS is clinically proven to treat both of those things, anxiety and depression, through different tapping rhythms on different sides of your head. TMS is a magnet that pulses on your head. I will not pretend to be able to understand the science behind it, but in layman's terms, it reactivates the areas of your brain that have gone dark, and it basically helps you to relight up your happiness again, so you have the ability to experience joy. Because one of the common symptoms of depression is anhedonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure or inability to feel joy. So TMS is going to make it so your brain is functioning more properly again, so that you are able to feel happy again. And I will tell you, I had tremendous results from my TMS, so much so that I have been begging my psychiatrist to give me booster sessions. I haven't qualified for booster sessions, but I think that it's absolutely amazing. And if that is a resource that is at your disposal, I would highly recommend talking to a doctor to find out if it's the right fit for you, because it doesn't have side effects. It is not a medication. It is a non-medication way to treat your depression through the neural pathways of your brain. And I think that's fascinating. I think that's so cool. Typical protocols are going to be 36 sessions, 30 sessions of like 6 weeks of sessions, and then 6 sessions that are done as a taper. There are some more sped up programs now that exist where you can do it like all within a week. But my psychiatrist tells me that it's harder to get those ones approved by insurance because they are like newer protocols. But definitely look into it. I will tell you, TMS is one of the things that I credit with absolutely positively helping to save my life. It gave me my life back. It got me motivated. I feel like part of it was just the fact that I was getting out the door and doing something active to try to get better every single day. I noticed a very significant improvement in both my anxiety and my depression by getting TMS treatment. It didn't last totally forever. It typically, I think, wears off in like 6 months to a year. But it made me survive. So I have so much gratitude and appreciation for that. Therapy, intensive hospitalization, or a more intense service like being in a hospital, medication, what else? TMS, and then coffee. Coffee or caffeine in general is a double-edged sword. Caffeine is going to make anxiety typically worse because it makes your heart beat fast, it makes you jittery, it makes you shaky, but it helps with depression. Caffeine has been shown to be as effective in treating depression as an antidepressant. No, I don't have the quote for that, so don't count on that, but somebody told me that at PHP who was like a medical provider. Because it gives you your energy again. If you are feeling like you have no motivation to do anything, it might give you the energy that you need to get motivated and actually do some things. And it goes hand in hand with the other thing that I will tell you is incredibly beneficial in teaching, in treating depression, and that is behavioral activation. Behavioral activation is the practice of listing all the things that used to bring you joy that do not bring you joy anymore. But thinking about how much effort it takes to do those things, finding the things that are the least amount of effort that have the highest probability for reward. So things like maybe you like to paint, you like to dance, you like to go swimming, you like to go for a walk, to sit outside, to listen to a podcast. You make a list, and if you need help coming up with a list, just search behavioral activation list. You'll find all kinds of ideas. You're coming up with a list of things to do, and you are doing them even though you feel no motivation to do them. You don't want to do them. You have no desire to do them. You are doing them anyways. You are doing them while miserable, knowing that you might actually feel better afterwards, especially if you do it on a repeated basis. Eventually that joy and that happiness is going to come back, but you basically have to relearn how to be happy again. So these are things that currently are not making you happy, but you know they made you happy in the past. And because of that, you have decided that it is worth it to try those things again. It is very hard to encourage yourself to do this, but when you know that it's going to make a significant impact, it is worth mustering up every tiny bit of energy you have when I know you have no energy at all. And that is why I say, don't do something super ambitious like you want to go to an amusement park that's 7 hours away. Like, do something simple, something that doesn't take any supplies, little effort, something that is very easy for you to get going and get started. And then build up over time. For me, I started going on walks. They were short walks at first, and I started doing paint by number, literally just to have an activity. And then I started watching a series of a TV show, binge watching it just so I had something to do. And over time, all of those things, over a period of multiple months, not immediately, I did eventually get better. I got better, but I put myself right back in that environment that made me sick. I went back to teaching. And I ultimately, a couple of years later, realized if I truly wanted to heal, I needed to get out of the environment that was making me sick, which is how I ended up switching to starting my own company, Jessica Glow Up, running the TikTok live, running this podcast, running my merch line, and really just working on spreading mental health awareness, because I do not want anyone to have to go through what I went through, but I know that there are people going through what I went through every single day that are just struggling to survive. And if nobody has told you yet today, I am proud of you. You deserve a standing ovation for choosing to stay another day, and that is not an exaggeration. Sometimes survival is the hardest thing that you have ever done. And if you have survived today or any other day, I am absolutely positively proud of you, and you deserve all the love because that is not easy. If you or someone you know is struggling with your mental health, please remember that you can call or text 988 for mental health support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They also have a chat function on their website. I would love to have you join the Glow Up community. So make sure to check me on all the socials at Jessica Glow Up, live host, and make sure to come jump into our TikTok live room. We would love to meet you and go on this mental health journey together. So until next time, know that you are loved, you are worthy, you are important, you are valued, you are appreciated, you are absolutely enough. The world is a better place with you in it. Please stay another day. And until next time, stay glowing.